Hi, Berclair Bears. It's Miss Anderson here to give you your first distance learning foundational skills lesson. Today's lesson is going to be, as you see on the screen, on adjectives. This is something that you are all so familiar with. We've spent a lot of time on it this year, and I'm sure you also spent time on it in third grade and second grade and maybe even first grade as well. The standard that we are adhering to today would be demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage when speaking and writing. We're going to begin with a little bit of a do now. I want you to go ahead and take a minute or two to write down 5 words that you might use to describe this snake. Now, if you're struggling at all to come up with words that you might use to describe it, I want you to just think about what you see. To someone who wasn't able to see this snake, what would you say to them about it? Now, some words you might have used to describe this snake might be green or even yellow, if you see some yellow scales, slimy, long, scary, big. And whether you knew it or not, a lot of the words that you were coming up with now were adjectives. To give you a really simple definition, an adjective is a word that gives information about a noun. Now, from here on out, any adjectives on answer slides will be in red, and nouns will be in blue. We'll get to that in just a second. So an adjective is a word that gives information about a noun. An adjective can tell what kind or how many. Now remember, a noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. So an adjective is a describing word for a noun. Now sometimes and oftentimes, adjectives are going to come before the noun that they are describing. In other cases, adjectives come after the noun and then the verb to be in whatever tense it might be in. So let me give you a couple of examples. The first example you see here on your screen is there were 2 snakes in the yard. Now 2 is our adjective here because it is telling how many. Snakes are the noun. How many snakes were there? There were 2 snakes. The students were jolly as they skipped to recess. And jolly is just like another word for really happy or joyful, right? The students would be the noun being described here, the people. Were, and that is the past tense of the verb to be. Jolly as they skipped to recess. Jolly describes how the students were, right? Let's look at the examples on the screen for a second, and we are going to do the first one together. So the first one says, the sky was cloudy when I walked to school this morning. Now this one's a little bit tricky because in this case, it's not an adjective that comes before the noun, it's an adjective that comes after. So I'm going to think to myself, what's being described here? In this case, the sky is being described, so that would be our noun. And the sky was, here's our verb to be, cloudy. Cloudy is our adjective. Remember, that's what we're learning about today. The adjective that describes the sky. Go ahead and take a second and do your best to find the adjectives in sentences 2, 3, and 4. And if you have a little bit of extra time on your hands while you're doing that, feel free to go back and try to find the noun being described. Good. Now, if you remember, the adjectives are all in red and the nouns are all in blue. So when you see a blue word on your screen, that's your noun. That's your person, place, thing, or idea. And when you see a red word on your screen, the red word is an adjective, so a word that describes a noun. We already talked about the first one. Sky was our noun. Cloudy was our adjective. If you look at the second sentence, it says, Miss Hunt has such interesting math lessons. Now, we're describing Miss Hunt's math lessons, and we are calling them interesting. So math lessons would be our noun, and then interesting is our adjective. In this third sentence, which is my favorite one because I love chocolate, it says, the gooey chocolate bar melted in my mouth. Chocolate bar would be our noun in this case, and then gooey is our adjective. It's describing the texture, right, or the feel of the chocolate bar. Now, in our last sentence, it says, I was really tired after a long day of baseball games. This was a really tricky one because of the way that it was worded, right? I am the noun in this case. I was being to be in the past tense, really tired after a long day of baseball games. Tired, in this case, is the adjective that describes how I am feeling. Let's talk for a second about adjectives in reading. How do adjectives contribute to the short story that we're about to read, and how do they make it better? Another question you can ask yourself is, how does your understanding of the story change because of the adjectives? So if you really want to read this alone, which I totally encourage you to do, go ahead and pause the video and then read what's on the screen in front of you. But for the sake of including everyone in this video, I'm going to make sure that I read the whole thing aloud, and then we'll go back and talk about some of the adjectives that we found. This short story is called Horsing Around. Peanut, a golden-colored horse, woke in the barn. She peered out the window to find fat snowflakes falling from the sky. The earth was covered in a thick blanket of snow. Look, it's snowing outside, Peanut said to a brown horse named Chestnut. So, Chestnut mumbled. He was eating his breakfast of hay. Let's go out and play in the snow, Peanut said. Chestnut shook his head. I don't like the cold. Wear your horse blanket and you will be warm, Peanut said. I don't want to get my hooves and shiny coat wet or dirty, he said. But you will have fun, Peanut said. I don't like to have fun. I want to stay inside where it's warm and dry. Peanut shrugged, put on her warm blanket, and stepped outside into the fresh snow. She trotted to the maple tree and stopped to examine the hoof prints she made in the snow. When Peanut looked back at the barn, she saw Chestnut wearing his blanket. He placed one hoof in the snow and he shivered. Too cold, Chestnut said, and ran back into the barn. Now I'm going to reread these questions on this side of the screen for you really quickly, and I want you to go back through and try to find a couple of adjectives in the story. How do the adjectives contribute to the short story? How do they make it better? Now, for example, I might say, in the beginning it says Peanut, a golden-colored horse, woke in the barn. Now, I know that Peanut's a horse, so that would be our noun. We're talking about the horse, right? And golden-colored describes the horse, right? So a golden horse. Golden would be my adjective in this case. Now, if I'm the reader, I'm going to be able to picture that horse in front of me now because I know that it's golden-colored, right? If they had just said Peanut, a horse, woke in the barn, great. I know that it's a horse, right? But I don't know what color it is. So adding that adjective in made it easier for the reader to envision or picture what was happening in the story. Go ahead and take a second and see if you can find any more adjectives throughout the story that might make it easier for you to understand it or picture it as the reader. Now you might have found that there are fat snowflakes, that it was a thick blanket of snow, a shiny coat, fresh snow, right? There are lots of examples, a warm blanket. And these are words that you may not have even thought about as being adjectives as you were reading, but they helped you to better understand what the story was about. Now, adjectives are not just present when you're reading. Obviously, they're also present when you are writing. So I'm going to go ahead and play with an example here of a sentence first that has no adjectives in it, and then a sentence, I'm sorry, not that has no adjectives in it, but a sentence without as many adjectives, and then another sentence where we added some in to kind of make the sentence more interesting. So the first sentence right here says, "My sister played quietly on the grass." Now, when I added in some adjectives, it says, "My adorable little sister." So I know now that it's a younger sister, right? I also know that she is adorable, right? She's really cute. My adorable little sister played quietly on the lush green grass. Lush meaning really healthy and thick, right? And then that it's green. So I can tell because it's lush green grass, this isn't happening in the winter or maybe even in the dead of the summer. This is happening at a time when the grass is thick and green and nice, right? And so I can tell a lot more about the scene just from those simple words that I added in. So think, what differences do you notice in these sentences? And which sentence helps you as the reader to better imagine this scene? And those are questions that you can ask yourself in your own writing, right? What could I add to help my reader better imagine the scene? Now, here you have the chance to go ahead and do your own adding of adjectives. Take a second and on your own, add some adjectives to these sentences to make them more descriptive. All right, so we're going to look at some possible answers that you could have had. Now, if your adjectives are different from mine, that's totally okay, so long as you added in some describing words, right? The teacher gave us difficult homework. In this case, our adjective is the word difficult. See that it's in red here? And then our noun would have been homework. The beautiful flowers were already blooming. Now I know that these flowers were beautiful, right? So here's our noun, and then here's our adjective. Beautiful could have been colorful, right? You could have chosen any word that you wanted to describe these flowers. My adorable dog, Marvel, and you guys have heard me talk about her so many times, you've seen pictures. My adorable dog, Marvel, plays outside with me. The tall trees sway in the gentle breeze. And in this last one, I added two adjectives, right? I went ahead and I made sure that my reader could close their eyes and picture the trees, right? They're tall and they're swaying in a breeze that's gentle. It's not a harsh wind, it's a gentle, soft breeze. Now here's an extension, and this is something that I want you to be able to do from home. You can feel free to text me pictures of them to the Google Voice number I gave you all, or you can send me a message on Class Dojo. Remember, my office hours are from 11 to 12 every day, so it's a great time to contact me if you have questions about video lessons. At home, write a short story about your first day of summer break. Now, a short story, right, is another word for, or a story is another way to say narrative. So this is narrative writing, which we've done a lot of this year, especially when we're practicing for TCAP. So at home, write a short story about your first day of summer break. Use 7 to 10 adjectives to add descriptions to your nouns and make the story more interesting for your reader. So think 7 to 10 adjectives, that's quite a few, but in theory, you could have 1, 2, or even 3 adjectives in every sentence, okay? Now remember, some really important elements of a story would be that you've got dialogue, that you've got descriptions, you've got characters that are talking to each other or thinking aloud, right? And that you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So be sure that as you are writing your story and you're setting it up, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end so that your reader can really track what's happening, and that you use those adjectives to make it even more descriptive and even better. I've had an awesome time learning with you guys today, and I can't wait to talk to you soon in the next lesson. Have a great day.